And we're in for a treat. If you allow yourselves to be in for a treat, we're in for a beautiful treat. This part of the book is stunning. We started the book we're covering now last year, but this part is stunning. And if you think you're getting close to knowing how to practice these things, this is the turbo fuel. That says, oh, I gathered all this fuel, this presses turbo, if you internalize it nicely. It really was that for me, and I hope to translate that for you. So, it's not only a good beginning to the class, it's an auspicious night for those of us who have some special practices in this bizarre world of Buddhism that can transform your reality. So if there are special things happening to you today, like you got really angry at someone, like you got really upset about something, but if there are forces around you today that are inviting you to respond to the world in some extra normal way, pay attention, because today's a special day for that too, which is interesting. We should start the class on that. So, having said those few welcome words and turning off my sound, let's create a holy space. Let's open up a holy space. And what that means is that in your heart, you're considering the way you understand reality, and you force that understanding on what you perceive to be reality, which is not the same thing. There is a potential here available to be seen, smelled, tasted, touched, etc., that is not accessible to us because we don't understand the totality of reality. We are narrowed down to our senses and our habituation worse. Understanding reality means you know the mechanism by which that forces this reality, and you force something to occur where you can get a tiny glimpse and a window at what is potentially there. And in a millisecond, this could be the new 3 joules. In a millisecond. Because it's coming from you. Because this is how it really is. So I invite you to do that to yourselves. To say, this is not just an afternoon, a Thursday afternoon in New York City, and part of my regular consumption. It's not another thing I've purchased, it's not another thing I've bought into, it's not another thing. This could be the very thing, the very lens through which you experience a whole new reality, and not metaphorically, literally. So it starts with you, the nature of who you are. And so if what I say is true, and what we learned is true, and what 2,500 years of the Buddhist teachings say is true, that there is no nature in the way things are, including your own mind, including your perception of yourself. And yet we forget, if that's true, you are the thing sitting in this room today is potentially a complete enlightened being, really. But if you don't see it, then you can create the courses to experience it that way. And so the invitation now is, invoke that in you, call that from whatever depths you have, to say, what is it in me that's sublime? What is it in me that's blissful? What is it in me that's wise? And stop fighting it, resisting it, normalizing it, calling it, limitizing it, whatever, and just, what if you were a Buddha listening to your own teachings? How would that feel? So to do that, we have this thing called the mandala offering. We could just do that, and it could invoke it if you had the virtue to see it that way. But we've learned this, which is supposed to trigger a memory, right? So let's not do that.
Seshin Buddhi Jishin Metotram Rirabling Shin Yundem Padi Sangha Shindu Miteluargi Drokun Namdal Shin Rajupa Parsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamninyatayami Sangye Jirang Zogi Chognamla Namchu Vardu Dakni Dasuchi Daki Chinyen Kipe Sonamki Trola Benchir Sangye Trupasho Sangye Shirang Zogi Choknamla Jamchu Vartu Dakni Dasuchi Daki Chinyen Kipe Sonamki Trola Benchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chidam Zogi Choknamla Jamchu Vartu Dakni Gyatsuchi Daki Chinyen Kipe Sonamki Trola Benchir Sangye Druparsho.
And see if you can take a seated position that's comfortable for meditation. Really ground yourself. And if you've been practicing meditation, you should know your posture, so just lock yourself into your posture, meaning both physically and mentally. Release any tension in your body. Just scan your body and look for the sensations you find there. Allow your mind to be placed on it and then release. And just allow your mind to focus on the sensation of your breath, the movement of your body, or the movement of the breath in and out of your nostrils. Not too tightly, just observing like a third party. Once you have your mind on your breath, just feeling the sensation of observing the movement. Move from that to the observer and see if you have a sense of what and who they are. And as soon as you do, see if you can reduce that to a single point until that disappears into emptiness from which it occurred. And then from that vastness, see if you can re-emerge as a sense of the watcher, but this time as the most powerful and awake being that you can imagine yourself to be. See if you can feel new as you observe the breath. And then whatever special enlightened being you have a connection to, ask them to come. And before you finish asking, they are in front of you, seated, facing you. Think of the most wonderful aspects of them, the things you revere the most. Find joy in seeing those things. See if you can find in you an impulse to remove any obstacles, to see them anything other than pure. Imagine them vanishing until you see them even more pure. And then ask them to stay and always teach you. And imagine them rising up, turning to face the same direction you're facing, getting smaller and smaller until they sit at the crown of your head. And spend some time just feeling them there powerfully, bright, lively. Their infinite qualities accessible to you at every wish. And when you're ready, just holding relationship to that new entity you've become, see if you can hold that relationship through the glass, and you can open your eyes. So before we get into studying this course, just want to talk about what the use of the course could be like. You know? I mean, if I remember coming into these classes and having 150 people with Geshe Michael, completely ready to put away New York City and just get a hold of these things that had never been talked about in the West. They weren't alone, they weren't accessible digitally, they weren't accessible in print, yeah? And for the most part, they're still not accessible. There's a bunch of stuff online, but a lot of it is confusing. And if you don't have a lineage connection to understanding the mechanics of a specific system, you could be overwhelmed and confused. And I know I've had those experiences trying to learn from other systems as well. There is something in understanding the code within a system that presents itself in your life. So in thinking about what is this that I'm experiencing, these classes, this information, what use is it for my life? You need to think about that, I think. I know I invite you all the time, but I'm saying, well, it's time to refresh the connection for yourself to your life for this information. You know, and Geshe Michael would have said, he did actually, that, you know, one of the things that you do is study your reality, study Dharma. And the study of Dharma is classroom hours like this, considering over and over and over things you might not see, things we might not understand, ideas that are beyond our experiential experience. So you can get a deeper understanding of what the hell is going on. What are these forces that we all know are governing our existence, but we can't seem to get our finger on it? And traditionally, the outer method of searching for that, and now the modern guru, the scientist, is looking for that outer method. I'm not saying that science is bad, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying investigating the outer world will give you results of the outer world, and you will find results. But the inner world is the only constant. The outer world will change. We'll have tablets and iPhones and telephones, and I mean, for God's sake, the world was square, and then it was oblong shape, and then it was round, and when it was round, it had nothing underneath, and it had turtles, and then we know it as this. And our outer investigation tells us these realities. They were all true for the people that lived them in those experiences. We are no different. Our reality is limited to our current understanding. The future of the human race will look at the world in a completely different way. They'll think we're cavemen for thinking it's just an orb in space. We're like, that's impossible, it's an orb in space. You tell that to the guy that thought it was standing on turtles. You know, you crazy, an orb in space? It revolves around the sun. The investigation of the outer world feeds us information that's accurate for our capacity at the time, and this will evolve. The inner world is an inner world. From this philosophy, it creates your outer world. That's why the outer world keeps changing. So, classroom hours, study of what is that, and as objectively as possible, and I don't mean dogmatically, and I don't mean religiously. I'm talking about true, deep investigation of what is happening in my perception of this reality. Study of Dharma, 2,500 years worth of books, will let you learn the scales on a piano, let you learn the techniques of a method, which is to look inside, yeah, to unlock something inside. This isn't the only tradition, but this is a tradition. It has a key, yeah. That alone isn't going to wake you up. That alone isn't enough. We have to contemplate on it, meditate on it. You need some kind of ritualistic, habitual pattern action around it. You need some practice. I need to practice that stuff. And that takes shapes, so many shapes in this tradition alone, let alone all these other traditions, where you are internalizing through the physical practice of a daily ritual these ideas to unlock something, a deeper, stronger reality. And then you really can't go deep, deep, deep until you do the third thing, which is meditating. Meditating deeply, getting to places in meditation where you are no longer bound by the external callings of this outer world and the way we're quickly conceiving of reality, but really has slowed it right down until you see the trickery, you see the illusion coming up. That alone will give you years, if not decades, worth